where we are. So before we get into our study, let's take a look at this. I want you to see a little bit about the people and the geography of that time compared today. On the map, I forgot to get my pointer. This is I have so much happiness in my life that I get to use this once in a while. And I don't want to miss this opportunity, because this is really important. Yes! Okay, this is where they are. This is Hebron right here. This is the valley of Hebron. Now, there is Jerusalem right there. If you go up north, there's Shechem right there. So that's where the father sends Joseph. He says, they're up in Shechem. So he travels this way up through there. Now remember, Jerusalem wasn't there. This is a map that was drawn later, which showed all the different tribes. So Jerusalem really wasn't there yet. But here's Shechem, which was there. Now there's Dothan right there. So he travels from here, he goes up to Shechem, and now he goes over to Dothan. Now why is that important? This area, why don't we go to the next map? Let me show you the next map. What happens is, as they sat down to eat their meal, they looked, no, go ahead, you can bring it back again. There we go. They sat down to eat their meal, and they looked and they saw this caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Okay, so now let's go to the map, and I want you to see. They're coming from this area called Gilead. Gilead is this area right around in here. It's kind of to the west of Jordan and kind of to the north. Down here was this area called Moab, and Gilead was this area right around in here. And it was an area that was known for this balm that they used. And you probably remember the hymn, "There is a balm in Gilead." That was a salve that they put on that they used for medicinal purposes. And there was a trade route that came right down through the middle of what is now Israel over into this area here, down into Egypt. And so that trade route came right through Dothan. So now they're in this area, and they're traveling from Gilead down to this area here. Now, I want you to see some very important things as it relates to today. The caravan of Ishmaelites were coming from Gilead. And the Bible says that they were Ishmaelites. Now the Ishmaelites were the sons of Ishmael, Abraham's son, remember? That he had with Hagar. They settled in the north and west of the Arabian Peninsula. Now this area here, this is the Arabian Peninsula. So they settled in this area here. And then they kind of moved over into this, kind of over here a little bit. But this area here, kind of like this, you just almost take kind of like a crescent. This is where they settled. So up in the area of Syria and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and even over into Iran, eventually a little bit over into Egypt. That was where these Ishmaelites began to settle. And they essentially formed the chief element of the Arab people, specifically known as the Bedouins. Have you heard of the Bedouin tribes? They were Ishmaelites, primarily Ishmaelites. And mostly Islamic, now mostly Islamic. Now you'll notice in that passage they're also called Midianites. The Midianites refers to the area where they lived. This area was known as Midian. So when it says that they were Ishmaelites and it says that they were Midianites, it's just saying the Midianites refers to the location where they lived, Midian, and the Ishmaelites refers to their lineage. But I want you to see something. Where they lived was right in this area here. Midian, the Midianites. That is now, we call it the Sinai Peninsula. And now remember, these are the Bedouin, the people who became the Bedouin tribes, and these were the people who became kind of the root of the Arab people and essentially the Arab nations. Now they're settled. These people are from Sinai, this area here, and that little red area there, as you can tell, right there is obviously Israel. Now, I want you to see some news stories and how that relates to today. Look at something that happened back in June. This is from Daily Alert in June 21. Look at this. Is Jordan's king losing control over the Bedouin? The Bedouin have controlled the Jordanian army and the security agencies since the establishment of the Hashemite rule in 1921. They received massive benefits from the Jordanian state, such as free university education, exemption from most taxes, and generous land grants. This has left the Palestinian majority in the country somewhat miffed at the regime and willing to replace it. Recently, there have been signs that the Bedouin are no longer loyal to the Hashemites. They are seeking to rule Jordan on their own. There's a conflict that's developing in Jordan, and the Bedouin are wanting to replace the current rule. They just want to be completely in charge. They want to take over, and they're already attempting to do that. Now, that happened in June. In August, this past August 24th, look at this story that was in Daily Alert. The largest terrorist attack in months took place last week near Eilat, killing 8 and wounding 25. You may have seen that in the news. The attack emerged from Sinai, which is fast coming loose from Egyptian control and falling under that of Bedouin criminal gangs and Palestinian terrorists. Whether the Egyptian military has the power and strength to reassert control of Sinai seems to be very doubtful. Now, what is happening is, in this area of the Sinai, which is just south of Israel, which is just kind of a desert, just a horrible area. I mean, it's just, you wouldn't want to go on a honeymoon there. And it's rocky, and it's desert, and it's not a pleasant place at all. But they have moved in and building terrorist camps there, and the Bedouin are establishing themselves there and working with a number of terrorist groups. Now, this was the story that came out this last Friday in Reuters News. Look at this. Al-Qaeda tightens grip in Sinai. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, counterterrorism are told an Israeli-hosted security conference this week, Egypt's political entropy, that means their disintegration, has helped reinforce and arm Sinai radicals. Many jihadists were released from jail in Egypt. They bring into the area many years of experience, knowledge, courage, and people who actually do not have anything to lose, said Nitzan Nuriel. He said such militants were flush with weaponry looted in a civil war-ravaged countries such as Libya and Yemen. If you want to buy today a mortar or a machine gun or even a Manpad, which is an anti-aircraft missile, all you need is a few dollars and you get it. The level of the threat is much more dramatic than it was a year ago. Now, what has happened is Israel, and you've heard me say this, and Jesus taught this, when you see this area surrounded by these armies, take note, when you see the beginning of it, take note that your redemption is nigh. We're there, folks. I mean, Israel is surrounded. We're there. And what's going to happen this week is Palestine, which obviously the enemy of Israel. Palestine for so long now has been wanting to establish themselves as a country. And they are asking the UN Security Council to grant them statehood status, meaning that the UN recognize them as a legitimate country which has a right to the lands that it claims, which are in Israel. So we're probably going to see a major escalation in violence, no matter how the UN votes. Now, more than likely what's going to happen this week, the United States is on the Security Council and has the veto power. There's some nations that have permanent status on the Security Council. The United States is one of them. And the United States has veto power. And so they're probably going to veto this request as it comes to the Security Council. But what that does is, once that veto is in place, then they can go to the General Assembly and ask for observer status. So now they're granted some legitimacy by being on observer status, which means that, okay, they're not granted statehood. In other words, they're not recognized as a legitimate country, but they are recognized as a country in the making that is about to happen. And so they're given a position of within the United Nations, which they can just build on and begin building relationships and trying to get the votes that they need for statehood. So no matter what happens this week, we're going to see this conflict escalate between Israel and the Palestinian people and the Islamic people in general. And you're going to see far more violence develop over the next several weeks, actually.
And it's only through your